So I want to kind of start out with, I'll share a secret with you. Now, those of you who know me might find this hard to believe, but most of my time when I was a kid, I was about as not confident as it could be. That I had no real confidence, because, and I've kind of reflected on, because I've got too much now, sort of thing, but when I was a kid, I had very little, and I kind of thought about why is that the case? What was going on? And when I was a kid, honestly, I don't feel like I ever fit anywhere. I wasn't a good athlete. I wasn't a great academic. I was okay, but I wasn't fantastic. And so I think it was a lot of that not really knowing where to fit. As you get a little bit older, you get into high school and, people start talking about the things that they want to do with their life. And I hadn't found anything I liked doing. And there was really nothing that I was looking forward to spending my life doing. And so people would always ask me, what do you want to do? And you get that great answer. I don't know. But you're 15, right? Like, do you really know at that point? But people seem to expect you to. So you're trying to figure it out. My dad was a millwright, which basically means he sets up and maintains industrial equipment, and I didn't like working with my dad, so that didn't really seem like a good idea to me, So, I was really fortunate, though, that I went to, on reflection, was a pretty good public high school. Now, I didn't think it was good when I was there, but looking back on it, it was pretty good. It actually had pretty broad academics. We had lots of math classes to choose from, English classes, all the kind of specials you look forward to. And also, we had a lot of shop classes that I think most schools probably didn't have. We had wood shop, auto shop, electric shop, print shop, and what I liked was metal shop. So in 10th grade, signed up for metal shop, and all you do is just really basic stuff, just kind of forming metals and that kind of stuff, kind of like that. So I took metal shop 2 in 11th grade. Then you get to do welding and machining and that kind of stuff, and I'm like, oh, maybe, I don't hate this. Maybe I want to be a machinist when I grow up. So I was really fortunate because my school actually offered 3 years of metal shop. And so if you do 3 years of metal shop in high school, when you kind of go to get professional training, you're kind of set up, pretty far along at that point. So I signed up for metal shop 3, my 3rd year. Now we know this is going to be a small class because, let's be real, how many people sign up for 3 years of metal shop in high school? Right? And I walk into the class, and the classroom is full. I'm like, man, this is awesome. Like, there's a ton of us. We can really kind of do really cool projects together. It turned out, no. Me and one other guy had signed up for Metal Shop 3. So what did they do? They put us in Metal Shop 2 again. And they said, you can work on new projects, but you've got to go do all the classwork all over again. Take all the tests all over again. I didn't want to do that. Now, fortunately, I had a math teacher in my senior year that I'd also had him in 11th grade. And I went to him and I said, man, this stinks. I don't really want to do this again. What can I do? And he said, well, we've launched a new class this year. We've called it computer science. Now, this is 1982. And so having a computer class in high school was pretty good. Now, I had never done anything with computers because, I think from the math classes, I think you could do well here. So he signed the paperwork to let me transfer out of Metal Shop 3 into what they called computer science, which was really just computer programming. And for me, that changed everything. For me, for the first time in my life, I found something I liked doing, that I was good at. And it's something that I really wanted to do because it fit my nature. Because I like solving complex problems. That's exactly what the job is. That I like learning all the time. And even 40 years ago, that was a field that was moving at incredible speed. It's even far more so now. So it really kind of fit me, and that changed everything about my life. I got confident, I got excited, I had a positive outlook about my life. And as I went on to finish high school, get more education, become a software developer, kind of took other jobs that come from being a software developer, it just fit. I felt fulfilled. Because I was living according to my nature. I was living, doing something that was consistent with who I was created to be. And so that's what I want to talk about today as we continue our series, Life on Purpose. I want to talk about being true to our nature. Now, as we talked about last week, that living life on purpose is actually pretty hard. It's pretty hard to live our lives with a real sense of control. We get moments of control, but in general, our life seems to control us more than we control our lives. And there are good reasons for that. Because if we kind of went through last week, we've all got work, and even if we're retired, we still have our finances and the stuff we're trying to figure out. So we think about that kind of too much, and we're always stressing about it. But then we have our home lives. So when we're home, we're thinking about work. When we're work, we're thinking about home, and we're bouncing back between those things. But we want to be good people, and good people volunteer. So I take my schedule that's too full, and I add more things to it by volunteering. But now I have trouble keeping any of those things going very well. So I realize what I need to do is do something I enjoy. But while I'm supposed to be enjoying myself, I don't actually enjoy myself because I'm thinking about the work I'm not doing, the home stuff I'm not doing, and the volunteering stuff I'm not doing. And then we pile on. We go, hey, I'm a Christian. Shouldn't I be doing something to connect with God? And our life becomes bouncing between those bumpers like it's pinball. That we're never really in control. Our lives are just kind of driving us through that mechanism. And what often happens is that as we live life that way, and we can't really keep that up very long because it starts to wear us out, and it starts to really exhaust us. And so we start going through our lives exhausted trying to get through that. Now, there are different ways that we can cope with that. One way to cope with it would be to step back, find balance, make choices that lead to a healthy life. I have met very few people who have successfully done that. What often happens instead is we kind of pick one and we concentrate just on that one excessively. For example, in my life, I swept kind of everything away except work. For much of my life, work was the center of my life. Because where had I find value? Where did I find value in my life? For the first time in my life, I found value by my work. And so I made my whole life revolve around my work because it was a place like things made sense to me. If nothing else in life made sense, what I did for a living made sense to me. But that's not healthy, right? That's not engaging with life overall. And what it does is it causes us to miss out on our larger purpose, of the truer aspects of our nature. Because in reality, all those things that we had talked about, our home life, our relationship with God, our work, doing things we enjoy, volunteering, all of those things are actually healthy expressions of our God-created nature. So when we're living our life well, we are engaging in those things, all of those things, but we're doing it in a way that doesn't exhaust us. We're doing it in a way that edifies us. We're doing it in a way that brings value and that clear sense of purpose. Because if I'm not living my life well-rounded like that, I'm missing out on part of who I am, a part of who I'm created to be. Now, often what happens is that as we kind of look at these sort of things, we can often think the solution is to build another task list. You know what I do? I'm going to build a great big task list, and I'm going to have some home stuff on there. I'm going to have some God stuff on there. I'm going to have some work stuff on there. I'm going to have some volunteering stuff on there. And we literally task list ourselves to death because we're just trying to pack all these things in all the time, and it wears us out. So what we need to do instead, I think, is that rather than get focused on all these tasks to fit into all these categories, what we really need to do is step back. Step back and understand our nature a little bit and understand how do we actually kind of have a life that incorporates these things, but in the way that we're meant to have a life that incorporates those things, in a way to have a life that actually fulfills us. And I think in order to do that, we have to attend to the fundamental aspects of our nature. So where do we start? If we want to make that kind of change in our lives, where do we start? Well, I think a good place to start is in the beginning, in the creation story. Because it actually turns out, bless you, Kitty. It actually turns out that in Genesis chapter 1, we see a little bit that helps us understand our nature. In Genesis chapter 1, it actually says, God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, according to our likeness." Now, if we look at that, we see the words image and likeness. And they seem like it kind of says the same thing in both cases. But it doesn't actually say the same thing in both cases. Image and likeness are similar terms, but they're not identical terms. If we look at image, the image of God, one way to think of that is that we've been given what we might say is the essence of God. And if we look up the word essence, it says that the basic nature. So we are created with the basic nature of God. So that loving nature that God has is part of our created nature. And as we look at likeness, though, if we look up likeness, that basically is the quality of being alike. If you look up alike, it says that a close resemblance, but not identical. In other words, we were created with the nature of God, but we're not God. We've got our faults and we've got our failings, but that core nature of God is there. We have a close resemblance to God. So what that means then, the more we understand about the nature of God, the more we understand about the nature of our humanness, what it means to be a healthy, high-functioning human. Because at our very best, that nature of God shines through us and from us when we embrace it and we live out our lives in a healthy way. Now, as we go through this series, we'll look at a few different of the aspects of God's nature. But today, I want to focus in on just one. And one reason I want to start here is that there's this one aspect of God's nature that I think is probably the most neglected aspect of our human nature for most of us. It's the thing that I think we miss out on most often. And again, we find this in the creation story. This actually still picks up in Genesis. And it says here that God saw all that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning, the sixth day. So that means that God's been doing all this creation work. And as he's going through this period of time that's expressed in the story as days, whatever amount of time it actually is, he's going through and he's doing all of this work. As he approaches the end, what does he do? He stops. He takes a minute. And he looks at it, and he looks at the results of what has happened. And he says, that's a good thing. He stops to enjoy it. And as we carry on, by the seventh day, God completed his work. And he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had done. Then God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, in other words, made it holy, because on it he rested from all his work which God had created and made. So again, there's some period of time that in the creation story is expressed as days. And over this time, he creates the universe. He starts creating plant life. He creates animal life. He creates us, man and woman. He creates us. And he stopped and he said, those things are beautiful. Those things are amazing. And he took time to take all that in. And the thing that's so important here is that it wasn't like he went through the whole creation process and said, well, check that off, boom, on to the next thing. No, he stopped. And he enjoyed it. He enjoyed the results of his labor. And then he made it a point to rest. And what happens now is over all those days, over all of that time and all that he had created and all that he had done, only one period of that time is actually declared as being sanctified. In other words, declared as being holy. The part that's holy is when he stops and he rests. Now we know that God doesn't get tired. Isaiah 40 tells us that God never gets tired. But resting is still important. It's still important even for God to take in the beauty of what his work has produced and to settle down and enjoy it. So I think through the creation story, God is modeling something very important. We are not built to keep going and going and going without stopping. We have to stop along the way and take in what we need to. We need to stop along the way and enjoy what we've done. And of course, remember that we are not God, which means we do get tired. And if we continually push through being tired, we just exhaust ourselves and we end up not doing anything as well as we would like. We end up not doing all the things that are part of our purpose, the things that we were created to do, that incredible change and impact that each of us are created to be a part of. We can't do it if we're exhausted and we're worn out all the time. So God is telling us that rest is a good thing, that is a holy thing. It is good to stop and take a rest. And it's important to remember that we have to really do that. But how often do we do it? How often do we really stop and rest a little bit? Well, speaking just for myself, not often enough. Man, I'm always running somewhere. I am always doing something. You know, and if I'm not actually running somewhere or doing something, I'm worrying about someplace I'm not running to, or I'm thinking about something I already did. Right? I never slow down, and that's not what we're meant to do. And we're not going to do, and here's the thing. We think by doing more that we will achieve more. That is not it. We achieve more when we live in step with our created nature, which includes a need for rest. We have to make an explicit choice to rest. If we look at this idea of this verse where it talks about on the seventh day being sanctified, that's often been used as saying, well, you need to go to church on Sunday. Now, I think going to church on Sunday is important. I don't have a job if you don't, sort of thing. But that's not really what it's about. I mean, yeah, that's important. We want to come together in church. And I do think that it's important to take at least one day a week and actually rest. But I don't really think that that's all this is about. I don't think that's actually enough. Because remember that last week, as we were talking about kind of the turbulence of life and getting caught up in that turbulence of life, we said what we need to do is have a healthy daily rhythm. And so I think that we should have a period of rest in every day. As part of our daily rhythm, we need to be intentional about taking a rest. And so as we launched this series, what we talked about was that what we're going to try to do is put together a series of good daily practices, kind of good building blocks, that we could use to kind of live our lives a little bit better each day. Right? So remember that last week, we kind of launched out with our relationship with God. That we said that we would start out by making sure that we allocate time every day for our relationship with God. And we said it didn't have to be a lot of time. That if you don't have much time, you can take just 5 or 10 minutes a day, just pray a bit, and engage with the Bible in some way, the Word of God in some way. It could be reading the Bible directly, it could be using reading plans, it can be reading devotionals, those sort of things. And as we talked about, if you don't have an existing way of doing that, one of the easiest ways to do it is the YouVersion Bible app. Right? Is that just go to Bible.com, install it on your phone, it's totally free. It'll read things to you. Right? It'll actually go through the scriptures, it'll read them to you. Has reading plans that often take just 5 or 10 minutes every day. It will give you a notification to remind you to do it. All those things are in there. So that's kind of the basis of it. And what we want to do now is add another building block. We need to prioritize our personal wellness. Now, if you look at your daily rhythm, and you look at your work, and your family, and everything else, how many of us really prioritize our personal wellness? Because the reality is that if we do not prioritize our personal wellness, we are not going to be able to do anything effectively. We're not going to do our work as effectively. We're not going to care for our family as effectively. And the thing to understand is that prioritize doesn't mean the most amount of time. Right? If you're still working, work is where you spend most of your time. Prioritize simply means that you say, this is something I make sure always happens. Just like we talk about the relationship with God. 10 minutes a day. But make sure it always happens. Well, when it comes to our personal wellness, we want to make sure that a series of things always happen. And when we think about wellness, again, we want to cover the basics. We want to try to get enough sleep. Right? We want to eat as healthy of a diet as you can, right? All those sort of things. But you want to take time to rest every day. And so often we think of resting as that, like, well, sat down, I watched TV. I don't really think that's resting. That's leisure. There's nothing wrong with that. But it doesn't reset us. It doesn't rebuild us the same way. When I think of resting each day, I think it should be some sort of active rest, that you should actually do something each day that actually rejuvenates you, but involves a little bit of activity. I think it's important for everyone to exercise to some degree. It doesn't have to be anything big. Take a walk if you can't take a walk, right? 3 times a week here. We have the senior exercise class where you exercise from your chair, but just activity makes a big difference. But I think one of the most important aspects of an active rest is seeing what we see, or doing what we see modeled in the creation story. Looking at what has happened, seeing what is good, and resting in it. To actually allocate time each and every day to say, what I'm going to do? I'm going to find what is good in this day. I know some people actually sit down every day and list 3 good things that happened today. But actually look for the good in every day, because when you go through the whole day, you can have 20 good things happen. That would be great to have 20 good things happen. But say you had 20 good things happen and 1 bad thing. What do you remember when you go to bed? The bad thing. We always remember the bad thing, or almost always. So we want to take time to actually look at the good things in the day. And we also want to take time to process the day, to actually work through what had happened. And if there are things that are bringing you down, acknowledge those things and take the time to understand why. And to the best of your ability, turn it over to God. But how do we do that? How can we do that? How do we do that effectively? I mean, one way that people have suggested is that, well, I'm just going to allocate 5 minutes a day or 10 minutes a day. I'm going to sit in a room by myself. It'll be quiet. And I'm just going to think through the day. I have never found that works, because here's what happens to me if I do that. If I sit in there quietly, I'm saying, I'm going to just think about the day. I'm going to rest. I'm going to relax my mind. I'm going to look for the good stuff. Oh, man, I forgot to go to the grocery store. Oh, geez, I got to go see somebody tomorrow. Oh, and my list of to-dos just starts cranking through my head. Or something bad happened and I can't get past it. And it just to keep working over, I wish I would have said this differently. If you're me, you say that a lot. Oh, I wish I would have said that differently. Right? And so you kind of run through that sort of stuff. So I don't find that just thinking through the day is really what works. You guys have heard me talk about this before, but I think the best approach to processing our day is journaling. And I don't mean Dear Diary. I mean, you can write Dear Diary if you want to. But journaling is the idea of writing down what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what's on your mind. Because there's something that happens when we write it down. There's something physiological about the process of writing our thoughts out. There's a mechanical process involved of writing while you're thinking that directs your thoughts. It keeps you on track. And again, it doesn't have to take a lot of time. Again, 10 minutes, 10, maybe 15 minutes if you really stretch it. And make it a point to actually see what was good that day and write those things out. And think about what happened that maybe didn't feel as good, or what you're concerned about, and write down why you're concerned about it. Scientific research after scientific research, study after study after study shows that journaling actually improves our mood, lowers our stress. It actually lowers our blood pressure. There are even some studies that indicate that it even improves healing in some cases, that it actually happens faster because we just get that stuff out of us. So one thing that I want to do is I want to encourage everyone to just try journaling, and I'm going to make it super easy for you. When you leave today, there's a stack of these in the back. It's a book with pages. It's got lines even. Pretty exciting, right? Pick one up. Just try it. Just try it. They're on the table as you head out. Grab one and just try it. Try it for a week. And you will see something amazing happen. My relationship with stress dropped dramatically when I started doing that, but also my clarity of thought went up dramatically when I began to journal. And it really works. And why does it work? Because it's in our very nature. God stopped and looked at what was good. He took time to rest. We are created with that nature. We are created in God's likeness. We are created to actually benefit from the process of stopping and looking what is good and taking time to rest. And if you're a Jesus follower, there's a promise of even a deeper, greater benefit. Because God promised something amazing for those who put their faith in Jesus. He actually says, "But this is the new covenant I will make with the people of Israel after those days." Now, where it says, "the new covenant I will make with the people of Israel," that simply means Jesus followers, that new faith-based relationship that's coming. The promise is, "I will put my instructions deep within them. I will write them on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people." When we take the time to process our thoughts, to actively process our thoughts and process the day, we connect more deeply with the power of God within us. That God has said that he will direct us from inside, that if you're a Jesus follower, God says his Spirit dwells within you, and that's how we can connect with it. That's how we start to see its leading. That's how we start to get a better sense of the path in front of us. Now, we're not going to see the path, a mile down the road, but wouldn't it be nice to feel confident about the next step? And if you take the next step and the next step, next thing you know, you're going where you're supposed to be. And so, my friends, if we will take this time to ensure that active, intentional rest of processing our days, processing what we're feeling, and just taking that 10 or 15 minutes, it will change your life more than you can imagine. I'll speak for myself. Changed my life more than I could imagine. Because suddenly there's direction, there's connection. You don't feel like you're just floating around all the time. You suddenly feel grounded. And you start to understand that there is a purpose and there is a path. And the things that we do really do matter. And we can all make a difference. So let's all be willing to embrace that gift of rest being built in to our nature.